So today, the Lord kind of led me on a journey in Matthew that I wasn't expecting to go on, but so much stuff started popping out at me, and I really just wanted, I wrote down these notes. This is all from today. So I wrote all this down, and I really want to go through this so we can see the symbolism a little bit deeper. And as we get closer to Passover, we're going to dive even deeper into this because there's so much here. We're going to dive more into the story. But today I want to talk about the Passover timeline and the Yeshua timeline, because it's very, very important for us to understand what happened, when it happened, so that we're not swayed by man's doctrines and man's traditions. Okay? This is very, very important because there's a lot of things that I used to think that when I started reading it, I was like, this doesn't line up. Like, this can't be. Like, what's going on here? So it's very, very important for us to understand. And I apologize, I did this today, so I don't have a fun PowerPoint slide. So this is all going to be notes, and I'm going to be writing a lot. So first, let's look at the layout of the original Passover Pesach timeline, right? So in the original timeline, we have what day was the lamb brought in to the house? We just read this today. Does anybody remember?
14th day.
Nope. What day was it brought into the house?
On the first day.
No.
Nope.
8 days before, right?
Nope.
7 days before?
Keep guessing. Keep
I believe
guessing.
it was 4 days.
3?
Could have been the 10th day.
10th day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we started with the 10th.
the 10th of
I was just
So
doing the math.
10,
14 days minus
11,
4.
Oh, there you go.
12, 13, 14. We're just going to count 10 through 15. So these are our days. So we're going to look at the timeline, right? Okay. So the lamb was brought in on the 10th day. So any time on this day, we have the lamb brought in, right?
Into the house.
Into the house. They brought it in the house. They kept it until the 14th day, right?
Yeah.
So they kept it until the 14th day, and then the 14th day, and then we know that it says that you were to prepare everything, slaughter the animal between the evenings. So between noon and sundown, between the evenings, that's when all that took place. So 10th, the lamb comes in. 10th, the lamb comes in. Then on the 14th is the Passover.
What do you think they were doing with the lamb for that many days?
Is he literally in the house?
Just like running around.
It says bring it in the house. So
Okay. Well,
scripture, Then it also talks about then on the 15th is the Feast of Matzah. That's when the Feast of Matzah starts, right? Right. So now let's look at this. So now we know that we have the timeline set for the original Passover. Let's go over and let's look at the timeline for Yeshua. Okay? So we're going to start in Matthew 21. So who's got their Bible ready?
me.
Let me get mine ready. I brought the iPad out so I can have so the Bible follow along too. All right. So let me get my Bible. All right. Let's go to Matthew. We're gonna go to Matthew chapter 21, and we're gonna kind of go down, but we might skip over some stuff that's not necessarily relevant to the timeline of this. So Eric, if you would read starting in 1 and go through 13, 1 through 13.
21:1.
Yep, through 13.
Now these are the ordinances which you will set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant,
Wait, where are you at?
21.
Matthew?
Oh, I'm still in Exodus.
Okay.
Sorry.
I don't remember Yeshua talking about buying a Hebrew servant.
I was also confused. But I said,
I was wondering you were like verse 1? I was like, yeah. Verse 1.
Got it.
All right, that's fine.
Now, 21.
Matthew 21, 1 through 13. Here we go.
Now, as they draw near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage. What is that in English?
Bethphage, I have no idea.
Okay. To the Mount of Olives, then Yeshua sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village before you. Right away you'll find a donkey tied up and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, 'The Master needs them,' and right away he will send them." This happened to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet, saying, "Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king is coming to you, humble and sitting on a donkey, a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Yeshua had directed them. They brought the donkey and colt and put their clothing on him, and he sat on the clothing. Most of the crowd spread their clothing on the road, and others began cutting branches from the trees and spreading them on the road. The crowds going before him and those following kept shouting, saying a lot of things in
Hoshiana to Ben David, Baruch haba Hashem Adonai.
that.
Which means,
Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, Who is this? And the crowds kept saying, This is the prophet Yeshua from Nazareth in the Galilee. Then Yeshua entered the temple and drove out all those selling and buying in the temple. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those selling doves. And he said to them, It is written, My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of thieves.
okay, so verse 1 through 13. So what happened originally on the 10th?
They brought the lamb in.
Yeah, the lamb was brought into the house.
Yep.
What's happening here?
The
He's
Lamb
brought
of God.
into the city.
Yeshua is coming into the city, but not just the city. Where did he go?
We went to the
Temple.
temple.
And what did he say the temple was? He said, You have called my
House.
house. He says, My house shall be called a house of prayer. My house, right? So he is brought into the house. So the first thing, right here. So we've got Yeshua coming into, I'm going to draw a little picture of a house. Yeshua comes into the house on the 10th. So we see that, right? All right, 14 through 18. Who wants to read that?
I'll
What
read it.
chapter are we in?
Matthew 21.
I got it. You gonna read it?
14 through 18.
Okay. The blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the ruling priests and Torah scholars saw the wonders he performed, and the children crying out in the temple, saying,
Hoshiana to Ben David.
they became indignant. And they said to him, Do you hear what these children are saying? Yes, Yeshua said to them. Haven't you ever read, Out of the mouth of babies and nursing toddlers, you have prepared praise for yourself? How far are you?
18.
Then he left them and went out of the city to Bethany, and he spent the night there. Now early in the morning, as he was returning to the city, he became hungry.
Okay, I'm going to try not to get lost in these scriptures, but the picture that this is painting, it's just, I was just like lost in the scriptures today. I mean, so verse 15, but when the ruling priest and Torah scholars saw what they were saying, they became angry. These are the people that should have been able to see him when he showed up.
Right. Yep.
They've got all the signs that we're studying now. They had them all. And they couldn't see him when he was right there. But that's not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is verse 17 and 18. So he left the city, went to Bethany, spent the night there. Now early in the morning, what day are we on? We are now here. We're
We're on the morning of the
we're in
11th.
the morning of the 11th.
Okay.
We're on the morning of the 11th.
Okay.
Continuing on. Somebody jump down to... I'll just read this one because it's just one. There's a lot of like details and stuff. Like he's cursing the fig tree now. But I'm
23,
sorry.
he re-enters the temple.
Hold on, I'm trying to see. I think I wrote down the wrong verse. Let me just read this real quick.
23 is when he goes back to the temple.
Yeah. Okay. Now, yeah. So now he entered the temple. The ruling priests and the elders of the people came to him while he was teaching, saying, "By what authority are you doing these things? Who gave you this authority?" Yeshua replied to them, "I also ask you one question. If you tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things." John's immersion was from here, and he goes on, and basically they can't answer him. But where is this taking place?
In the temple.
It's back in the temple, so he's back in the house, right? The lamb is in the house for 4 days, so he's back in the temple, right? So let's continue on. Verse 28 through 32. Volunteer. Elizabeth.
20 to 32?
28 through 32.
What do you think about this? A man with 2 sons told the older boy, "Son, go out and work in the vineyard today." The son answered, "No, I won't go." But later he changed his mind and went anyway. The father told the other son, "You go." And he said, "Yes, sir, I will." But he didn't go. Which of the 2 obeyed his father? They replied, "The first." Then Jesus explained, "I tell you the truth, corrupt tax collectors and prostitutes will get into the kingdom of God before you do. For John the Baptist came and showed you the right way to live, but you didn't believe him, while tax collectors and prostitutes did. And even when you saw this happening, you refused to believe him and repent of your sins.
So who is he telling this to? The Pharisees.
Ooh.
The Torah scholars. Right? That's who he's telling this to. And then the first line of verse 33 says, listen to another parable. So where is he at?
In the temple.
Still in the temple. Talking to the Pharisees and the Torah scholars.
Yeah.
So one thing I want us to make clear, we're going to go through a lot of scripture really quick to get through this. But so far we've studied Genesis and now we're into Exodus. The book of Genesis, from Adam to Moses, goes over the course of about 2,500 years. The book of Matthew, from the 3rd chapter till the end of the 28th chapter, covers 3 years. So all of this is happening. We're used to this pace studying the Torah that we're like, a lot of time is taking place. A lot of time is not taking place now.
A short amount of time.
Short amount of time. So almost the entire book of Matthew takes place over 3 years. 3 years. So what we're getting ready to read is taking place over a short time. I'm going to show you that as we lay this out. So let's jump now to Matthew 22. Let's keep going. Verse 1. Yeshua answered and spoke to them again in parables, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to the king who has made a wedding feast. So this is a great parable, right? So
He's still there.
he's still there. So from 21 up until where we're at now in 22 is a matter of minutes has gone by. I mean, this is like basically like tonight, how long has taken place. Like he's continuing to tell them things. And he's still there in the temple. So somebody read 15 and 16.
22.
22, yeah. 15 and 16. Really, really easy.
I got you.
Go ahead, Dee.
Then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might trap him in it with the word. And they sent to him some of their disciples, along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are honest and teach the way of God in truth. And what others think doesn't concern you, for you do not look at men's appearance.
So now we're seeing, okay, so they went away to do something. They sent some people. So we've seen a little bit of time, right? It's not the back-to-back, so we're seeing a little bit of time elapse. But if we go down to verse 23, it says, on that day, Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to Yeshua and questioned him. So what day are we on? We're still in the 11th. All this is still taking place on the 11th day of the month. So let's jump down 34. And then we're going to read 34, and then we're going to jump to 41. But the Pharisees, when they heard that Yeshua had silenced the Sadducees, gathered together in one place. Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Yeshua asked them a question. So the Pharisees have gathered up. They're ganging up on him now. They're trying to get their numbers. They're like, maybe if we gather together and get our numbers, we can gang up on it. And if you keep, I'm not jumping into.
That's a good.
We could sit here and read through this whole thing, and I would be in tears by the end of it because it's just phenomenal. But we're skipping through because I want to focus on this timeline right now. So there's so much that continues going on. There's this is when they asked him what's the greatest commandment. So let's go to Matthew 23. Let's continue on. We're trying to set again this timeline, right? Somebody read verse 1 through 7. Mark, can you read that?
Sure. Matthew 23, right?
Yep.
Okay. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in the chair of Moses. Therefore, all that they tell you, do and observe, but do not do according to their deeds. For they say things and do not do them. They tie up heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are unwilling to move them with so much as a finger. But they do all their deeds to be noticed by men, for they broaden their, how do you say that?
Tefillin? Phylacteries?
Phylacteries, I've heard of that. And lengthen the tassels of their garments. They love the place of honor at banquets, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and respectful greetings in the marketplaces, and being called rabbi by men.
So Yeshua then continues to go on, and basically call them out and say, you shouldn't be called rabbi because there's only one rabbi. You shouldn't be called teacher because there's only one teacher. You should be, like, he just lays it out. Like, you should be called servant. That's basically what he says. That's the only title you should have is your servant. And he goes on to say, woe to the Pharisees and the Torah scholars, right? But, interesting enough, no time has lapsed yet. So where are we still at?
11.
We're still on the 11th day. This is all in the temple. He's still in the temple on that day. Still just nailing them to the wall. If you continue to read through it, I was just like, whoo. So,
I was just to say, when you go on in Hebrews and you learn that, like, basically, like, Yah fires the Levitical system because they were so corrupt, and he places Yeshua over being in command of, like, over the law, you can see here how mad he is at them for what they've done and how difficult they've made it for people to be obedient to the Father.
yeah. So, if we look at, there's nothing specific in 24 and 25, but chapter 24 and 25, as the day goes on, we see Yeshua go back to the Mount of Olives. Remember, earlier he was at the Mount of Olives, he came in Jerusalem, he left and went and slept at Bethany, goes back to the Mount of Olives, and he's going back to rest after his long day. I mean, he just had a showdown with the Torah scholars. And so, previously, every time we see him go away, it's for him to rest, to sleep, right? And then, continuing on in those chapters, he talks to his disciples about the signs of the end times. He's calling for them to watch for those signs.
Oh, yeah. 10 virgins.
The parable of the 10 virgins takes place, and the parable of the talents takes place, which I was just floored when I read this today. Who did he tell the parable of the 10 virgins to? Just the disciples.
Oh, wow.
Who did he tell the parable of the talents to? Those were just to his disciples, because they were the ones, because it says, in hold on, let me keep going. It's loading Matthew 24, keep going. Now when Yeshua, very first verse of 24, now when Yeshua went out and was going away from the temple, his disciples came up to him. So he's leaving by himself, his disciples are gathered around him. Then it says, as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us when these things will happen. This is when they're talking about the signs of the end times. And he goes on then to give them the parable of the faithful servant. He gives them the parable of the 10 virgins, the parable of the talents, the righteous judge. All these things just to the disciples.
Wow.
So, continuing on then in chapter 26. So we're still on the 11th day. We're still on the 11th day.
It's
We're
a
just hanging
very
out.
busy day.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Such a long day.
So, verse 1 and 2 of of 26. Who wants to read that?
I got it.
Verse 1 and 2.
Now it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings that he said to the disciples, you know that after 2 days is the Passover, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified.
Okay, so now he's saying, so it's the next day. He's saying in 2 days is the Passover. Passover happens on when?
14.
So now we're on the,
Well,
so now we finally got to the 12th day. Finally got to the 12th day. This is awesome.
He's basically telling about what's going to happen to him.
Yep. All right, somebody read 3 through 5.
26, I can get it.
Yep, 26, 3 through 5.
At the same time, the leading priests and the elders were meeting at the residence of I don't know how to say the word,
Caiaphas.
the high priest, plotting how to capture Jesus secretly and kill him, but not during the Passover celebration. They agreed, or the people may riot.
Okay, so he says we can't capture him when?
During Passover.
During Passover.
So they had to do it before.
So here's Passover, right? So everything that is about to take place has to happen before this happens. Okay? Just keep that in mind as we continue to read. Alright? So verse 6 through 13 shows us the story that we know of the woman with the alabaster box. Where they're there, he's with his disciples, the woman comes, breaks the alabaster box, anoints Yeshua, and the disciples are like, why are you wasting all that on him? We could have sold that for so much money. I can imagine them all. He probably was the ringleader because he was the treasurer. But I can imagine Jesus just like,
Oh my gosh.
all the memes, with what's his name?
Picard.
Yeah, all of them. There's the Picard one. There's the Ryan Gosling one. There's so many of them. But I can just see Yeshua doing that, right? So, babe, read 14 through 16.
Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the ruling priests and said, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" And they weighed out 30 shekels of silver for him. And then on, Judas began looking. Judas, his Hebrew name is Judah, began looking for a chance to hand him over.
Yeah. So, in case, I have to go back and look at my notes, and we can figure this out at a different time. 30 pieces of silver. It's a lot of money. A
Like
lot.
half a year's wages that we figured out.
It was a lot. Yeah. It was a lot.
So
It wasn't just like, like, oh yeah, you got a little bit of money. No, it was well worth. It would have been well worth his betrayal. Let's put it that way.
What, Carrie? Did you
That was
say something?
I didn't say anything.
Y'all sound too
They
much
do.
like.
Okay, so Mark, we read 17 through 19.
Sure. This is still chapter 26?
Yep, still in 26.
Okay, sorry.
We're gonna be there for a little bit.
We jumped a lot, so
Yeah. You're fine.
All right, now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I'm to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" You said through what?
19, one more verse.
Okay, the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared for the Passover.
Okay, that was a little Freudian slip there. You almost said 4. There should actually be 4 there. Prepare for the Passover. But we'll get to that in a second. So it's okay. So what does this say? Now it says on the first day of matzah, the first day of unleavened bread.
Right.
When is the first day of unleavened bread?
It's the day
It's the
after.
day during.
After.
The 15th.
The 15th.
The 15th is the first day of unleavened bread. So how could they be preparing for Passover on the first day of matzah? So this word, again, sometimes I want to just slap translators.
What verse are you in?
17.
Okay.
Now on the first day of matzah, this word "first," the first day of matzah, or I'm sorry, not the first day, where it says now on the first day of matzah. If you actually look at that in the Hebrew, that can also be translated as before. On can also be before. So it should say now before the first day of matzah.
Right.
The disciples came to Yeshua. So it's taking place before. So sometime in this area, he's talking about it.
Well, that's weird.
Yes.
I didn't catch that.
Yep. And then
So is that in the Greek or Hebrew? Because you said Hebrew.
that's what I meant to say. Sorry, I'm so used to teaching Torah. I forget the Greek. Sorry, in the Greek. So, but what's interesting too though, is it says prepare the Passover, right? So what were they instructed to do? What are they going to do?
Hold the feast.
No.
Well-
what were they just instructed? What were the instructions of? Go into the city to do what?
Find a place.
Yeah, find a place.
Yeah.
That's what they're
A
preparing.
certain man.
He's saying prepare for the Passover by doing what? Finding a place. So this is not starting to kill the lamb.
So just
Ain't got that far
where
yet.
they're going to have dinner.
Because there's very specific instructions for them slaughtering the lamb.
Right. You just need a location first.
Yeah, so the first thing they do, so he's like, go find me a place. Go find a place. Alright, so continuing on, verse 20. Now when it was evening,
So the next day, right?
Sunday.
so yeah. So now when it was evening, Yeshua was reclining at the table with the 12. As they were eating, he said, "Amen, I tell you, one of you will betray me." This evening is in reference to when? When does the day start?
In the evening.
In the evening.
That's what I was saying.
So now we're right here. We're at the transfer point from 12 to 13.
Okay.
We're at the evening. So now we're transferring over into the 13th.
So they're just talking about get a place, then they coming back for dinner that's just regular.
Yes, and we're going to see
Okay.
we're going to see how we can know that in just a second. So 26 through 29.
I'll read.
Got it?
Now when they were eating, Yeshua took matzah, and after he offered the wine and broke and gave to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the removal of sins. But I say to you, I will never drink of this fruit of the vine from now on, until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom."
So, different translations say it differently, and this is one of the times where the Tree of Life version irks me, because the Tree of Life version says, "Now while they were eating, Yeshua took matzah." Do we remember earlier when we talked about the narcegesis, and we talked about the exegesis, and we talked about the eisegesis? Does anyone remember what the term for eisegesis is?
Preconceived
Yeah.
ideas put into text.
Taking your opinions and inserting them into the text. Right? So, because the Tree of Life version was translated in more of a messianic format, they take
Messianic Jews.
yes, they take this and insert the word matzah in here. Right?
Complete Jewish Bible does too.
Complete yes. They do the same thing. They input matzah here. And I'm going to say this on the camera and don't send me emails. They do it on purpose. I'm just going to say it out flat. They do it on purpose because they don't want you to understand this timeline. Because if you understand this timeline, you can prove Yeshua is connected to Passover.
But the Messianic, they are Messianic.
I'm just telling you that there are a lot of people that are Messianic. There are a lot of people who are Christians that still preach that Yeshua's Last Supper was Passover, and it cannot be. It cannot be.
I'll be quiet. I won't give you
Okay?
the punchline away.
Yeah.
It cannot be, and we're going to show you this.
That's always
So
preached. That's it.
it's always.
It doesn't make sense.
It's always preached that way. It's
Yeah,
always taught
it is.
that Passover, the Last Supper, was Passover. So here's the thing.
So what is it in Greek? It's just bread.
In this word, the Greek word for matzah is azumos. In the Greek word for matzah is azumos, and we see that earlier when it talked about the feast of matzah. That word matzah there is azumos. The word here is artos, which literally translates loaf.
Which is
Yeah.
leavened.
It is leavened. It is not matzah. So that is an extremely deceptive translation to put matzah in there, to interject their own opinion into the text. Because I looked it up, because I was like, something's going on here. So I looked at it, right?
Sus.
So there's our first clue. That's one of our first clues.
Gotta get letters.
So, don't send me emails.
I just looked at the complete Jewish Bible. It also says matzah.
Yes.
But then the King James version says bread.
Yes,
Mine says bread.
a lot of them do
Come
say
on now,
bread.
it's sad when the King James gets it right.
Yes.
It's still-
Okay, so let's look at verse 30 through 35. Who wants to read? Erica, you want to read?
Sure.
30 through 35.
Let's make sure I'm in the right place. 26:30.
Yes.
And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same.
So they're all saying the same thing. But, interesting, another reason I want to point this out, and I'll probably get emails about this too. In the Tree of Life, and I don't know what the complete Jewish Bible says, somebody could probably tell me this. In verse 30, it says, after singing the Hallel, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Does anybody know what the Hallel is? The Hallel is the song that is traditionally sang after the 4th cup of the Passover Seder.
Oh.
It is not Hallel in the Greek. The word there is simply hymn. What did the apostles do every time they got together? They worshipped. They sang songs with each other. They broke bread with each other. This is not Passover.
The complete Jewish Bible does say hello.
Yeah. They interject, they eisegesis that into the text. Okay? I'm going to get emails. I feel it now. I'm going to get emails. Alright, so then if we continue on, in verse 36 through 46, we have the whole instance of Yeshua going to the Garden of Gethsemane and praying. Then 47 through 56 is when we officially see his betrayal. It's when Judas comes, kisses him on the cheek. That was his sign. Interesting that he uses the same word. This will be the sign. I hate that. So that was his sign. And then verse 57 through 68 is when the accusations start to fly. That's when the people come forward. Oh, he said this and he said that, and basically the trial begins. So somebody read 69 through 75.
I got it. Meanwhile, Peter was sitting in the courtyard, and a servant girl came over to him and said, "You also were with Yeshua of the Galilee." But he denied it before everyone, saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." And when he went on to the porch, another servant girl saw him and said to those who were there, "This man was with Yeshua of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I don't know the man." Wow.
An oath.
Which means I swear. He basically said, I swear I don't know the man. A little while later, some of the bystanders approached Peter and said to him, "Surely you're one of them too. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to curse and to swear an oath, "I do not know the man." Right then, a rooster crowed. Is there more?
No, that's fine. I mean, you can read the last line if you want.
Then Peter reminded himself of the word Yeshua had said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went away and wept bitterly.
So Yeshua told him, he said, "You're going to deny me. Before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me." And so I always thought, and I feel like I was always taught, the rooster crowed because Peter denied him 3 times. Why did the rooster crow?
Next day.
It's morning. Guess what day we're on? We're now on to the 14th. We're on the 14th.
Morning.
Now we're on the 14th. And we're going to continue to see it. We're going to keep laying this out.
Morning being sunrise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we've gone through the evening. The
Right.
rooster crows because the sun's coming up. He
Right.
sees the sun.
Yep.
It's morning time, right?
And then the
real
next
quick-
line is when morning came.
Oh, okay, real quick. I've actually heard another really neat thing that talked about that there were trumpets that were blown from the temple at sunrise, and that they also called them like the rooster. So there's a
Oh, yeah.
cool little thing there too.
So, Mark pointed out, verse 1 and 2 of 27 now. When daybreak came, the ruling priests and elders of the people conspired against Yeshua to put him to death, and they tied him up, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. So now we are in the morning of the 14th. We're somewhere right here. Right? They wouldn't have handed him over to the governor in the middle of the night. Like, he's at work. Yeah, they're waking him up. All right, somebody read 3 through 10.
Got it. In 27.
Yes.
Then Judah, his betrayer, saw that Yeshua had been condemned. Feeling remorse.
20.
He's got it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he's right.
Okay, sorry.
Jeez, man.
27.
Okay.
Then Judah, his betrayer, saw that Yeshua had been condemned. Feeling remorse, he brought the 30 silver pieces back to the ruling Kohanim and elders, saying, "I've sinned, betraying innocent blood." But they said, "What's that to us? You see to it yourself." After tossing the silver into the temple sanctuary, he left. Then he went off and hanged himself. But the ruling Kohanim took the silver pieces and said, "It is not permitted to put these in the treasury, since it is blood money." So after they conferred, they bought with him the potter's field as a cemetery for strangers. For this reason, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what was spoken to Jeremiah the prophet, saying, "And they took the 30 silver pieces, the price of him on whom a price had been set by the children of Israel. And they gave them for the potter's field, just as Adonai arranged for me."
So they were worried more about their check boxes and about being lawful after they sold, if they paid somebody 30 pieces of silver to betray somebody.
And then like, oh no, that's.
And they're like, oh no, we can't do that. That's not. That's not lawful. That's not lawful. We can't use that in the temple anymore.
Completely
Like,
ignoring the fact they just
It was
innocent man.
So it was all about the check boxes, and we talked about that earlier tonight. It was just check boxes, check boxes, check
That
boxes.
would be an instance. Their hearts were not circumcised. They were not being obedient out of a heart to love the Father.
That's right.
They were obedient to satisfy their own self-righteousness.
Yep. So somebody continue on 11 through 14.
Now Yeshua stood before the governor, and the governor questioned him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" You say so," Yeshua said. And while he was accused by the ruling priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Don't you hear how many things they testify against you?" Yeshua did not answer, not even one word. So the governor was greatly amazed. Now during the feast, the governor was accustomed to release to the crowd one prisoner, anyone they wanted.
So we know this is coming up to the feast, because it was custom for them during the Feast of Unleavened Bread and at the Passover time that they would release a prisoner. So we're seeing that. And then continuing on, there's some of this I just want us to read because it's amazing. But this is really cool. So now during the feast, the governor was accustomed. Well, I'm rereading over you.
You are.
Oh, you read one verse more than another. Now during the feast, the governor was accustomed to release the crowd one prisoner, anyone they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner, and I'm going to read it in the normal translation, called Barabbas. So when they were gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Which one do you want me to release for you? Barabbas or Yeshua, who was called Messiah?" For he knew they had handed him over out of envy. While Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message, saying, "Don't have anything to do with that righteous man.
Wow.
For today I've suffered many things in a dream because of him." Now the ruling Kohanim, or priests and elders, persuaded the crowds that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Yeshua. But the governor responded, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "What then shall I do with Yeshua, who was called Messiah?" "Execute him," all of them said. Now what's interesting about this, and this has nothing to do with the timeline, but this is just really cool. Barabbas, his name in Hebrew is Yeshua Barabba. His name is Yeshua, the Son of the Father. That's his name in Hebrew.
Wow.
So, and this has nothing to do with the timeline, but I can't not say it. I feel like there is a link to, are you going to take Yeshua the Messiah, the real Yeshua? Or are you going to take this one, Yeshua the Son of the Father? It almost alludes to, are you going to take the real Jesus, or are you going to take this false Jesus?
Yeah. The Antichrist.
The real Yeshua, the false Yeshua. So you got Yeshua the Son of the Father, or Yeshua the Anointed One. That's what Hamashiach means, the Anointed One.
And there, who was that other Yeshua's father?
It just says Abba.
I know, but it just says, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, just says Son of the
What
Father.
was his name?
Yeah. There's a whole nother line of thought we can talk about Barabbas too. That it's just not for tonight. We don't have time for that. All right, let's continue reading, because this is so good. 24. When Pilate saw he was accomplishing nothing, but instead a riot was starting, he took some water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this blood," he said. "You see to it yourselves." All the people answered and said, "His blood be on us and on our children." Does this remind you of anything? Anybody that's been in? So anybody that's been in the study, does anybody remember? Does this ring a bell with anybody? 12 tribes. Talking about putting things on your children.
Well, if you sin, it's...
Nope.
I think we're talking about the generational.
Reuben. What did Reuben do when they thought Benjamin was lost? Reuben said, "Oh, I promise against my kid's life."
Yeah, that's right. I remember we studied that a few weeks ago.
And Judah said, "No, I'll take the punishment. If anything happens to him, I'll take the punishment." But Reuben said, "On the blood of my children."
Nice guy.
Like, what? Really? Well, and we see what happened. His blood was on the children. Right? So then, continuing on. Then the governor's soldiers took Yeshua into the praetorium and gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe around him. And after braiding a crown of thorns, they placed it on his head, put a staff in his right hand, and falling on their knees before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." They spat on him, and they took the staff and beat him over and over on the head. When they finished mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes back on him, and they led him away to crucify him. Now, the reason I want to read these parts of the story, this is all taking place at the same time they're preparing the Passover. Like, they're preparing the Passover. Like, they haven't started slaughtering their lamb yet, but it's a day of preparation. The next day is a Sabbath, right? So we know that the day of the 14th is a day of preparation, and then we know that between the evenings is when they start the prepping of the actual lamb. So at this point, the people are preparing for the Sabbath. So they're preparing for the Passover. As they came out, they found a man from Cyrene, Simon by name. They forced him into service to carry Yeshua's cross. And when they came to the place of Golgotha, that is to say, place of a skull, they offered him wine mixed with gall to drink. But after tasting, he was unwilling to drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. And they sat down and kept guard over him there. Over his head, they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Yeshua, the King of the Jews." And when we get into this deeper, I'm going to show you that what they put on the sign actually spelled out Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. But that's for a different day. Then 2 outlaws were executed with him, one on the right side and one on the left. Those passing by were jeering at him, shaking their heads and saying, "Who are you going to you who are going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself." Now they're mocking him. "If you are Ben Elohim, the Son of God, come down from the stake." Likewise, the ruling priests, along with the Torah scholars and the elders, were also mocking him. The people that should have seen him and knew what this was representing are mocking him. "He saved others," they were saying, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the stake and we'll believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, 'I am Ben Elohim.'" Even the outlaws who were executed with him were ridiculing him in the same way. Now from the 6th hour, darkness fell upon the land until the 9th hour. About the 9th hour, Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" That is, my God, why have you abandoned me?" When some of those standing there heard it, they began saying, "This man is calling for Elijah." Right away, one of them ran and took a sponge. He filled it with sour wine and put it on a stick and was offering it to Yeshua to drink. But the rest were saying, "Leave him alone. Let's see if he is Elijah come to save him." And Yeshua cried out again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit. So, if we back up a little bit, now from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, the 6th hour, the 6th hour
Before evening.
is 12 o'clock, is noon.
Yeah, that's what mine said.
It's 12 o'clock noon. So 3 hours later, the 9th hour, is 3 o'clock. 3 p.m. basically. So we're right smack dab in the middle of their time frame of when they were supposed to sacrifice the lamb. Right? Now what's interesting is, what does it say that happened between the 6th and the 9th hour?
Darkness.
Darkness. So there was 3 hours of darkness. What just happened in Egypt?
The darkness.
3 days of darkness. So, neat little parallel there. 3 days, yeah. So now we've seen that Yeshua has been crucified. The Lamb has been slain. So if we continue on a little bit, 57, go down to 57. "Now when it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had also become a disciple of Yeshua. This man went to Pilate and asked for Yeshua's body. Then Pilate ordered for it to be given up, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it in clean linen, and he laid it in his own tomb, which he had cut in the rock. Then he rolled a large stone in front of the door in the tomb and went away. Now Miriam from Magdala was there, and the other Miriam sitting opposite of the tomb. So he grabbed the body off of the cross and took and buried it at the evening. So why is this important? What would have been that evening? Passover. So he wanted to get it done before Passover. Why?
Because it's a Sabbath.
It's a Sabbath. And not only is it a Sabbath, what is it? It's not just a Sabbath.
It's a high
Holy Sabbath.
It's a feast day.
Oh.
So he would have been, we'll learn this later when we get into Leviticus, by touching a body, he would have been unclean until sundown, then he had to take a bath. So he wanted to get that thing down before the actual Passover took place, so he could get it down. Sundown would come. He could be cleansed ritually, ceremonial clean before Passover. So somebody read 62 through 66.
I can read it.
Yep.
The next day on the Sabbath, the leading priests and the Pharisees went to see Pilate. They told him, "Sir, we remember that the deceiver once said while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise from the dead.' So we request that you seal the tomb until the third day. This will prevent his disciples from coming and stealing his body, and then telling everyone he was raised from the dead. If that happens, we will be worse than we were at first." Pilate replied, "Take guards and secure the best you can." So they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it.
So this is now on the next day. What day is it?
Sabbath, matzah.
The 15th. So it's the first day of matzah, right? And it says it was after the preparation. The 14th would have been the day of preparation for that Sabbath, right? So here's Yeshua, crucified as Passover, right? Hold on a second. One second. I'm gonna erase this for a second. Okay, so we've got
All that hard work.
So we got the 14th. We got the 14th, right? Yeshua dies. The Passover takes place. He is the Passover Lamb. The next day is the 15th, right? So then we have the 16th, the 17th. I'm just going to write 18 for giggles. So we got. So he's in the tomb one night, one day. So now we're here. One night, one day. One night, one day. Right? Where does that land us? 1, 2, 3. So he's going to raise right here. Right? Does anybody know what this day is? First fruits. That's why Yeshua is said to be the first fruit of many brethren. He raised on first fruits.
What is first fruits?
First fruits. It was when they brought their first fruit as an offering to the Lord. But it was also then when Yeshua raised on first fruits, he became the first fruit of the living, because he's the first one that raised from the dead. So he went back to the Father as the first fruit. So now we can all become partakers of that. So how does the story end? We just talked about it a little bit, but you just have to keep reading that on your own, and we're going to talk about this more as we get closer to Passover. Because as we get closer, we're going to dig a little bit deeper. We're going to read more of the story, because there's just, I was getting wrecked today. I was like, this is awesome.
I was just going to ask, with them freeing a person, wasn't there like a lamb for Passover that they would free, right?
That was the scapegoat. That was the day of the